At the beginning of the story, we see a prison located on a remote and uninhabited island. Today, a few new prisoners are being brought in. Among them, a prisoner named Edmund. When he tells the warden that he has committed no crime, that he has been framed for a false offense, and therefore asks for help, the warden replies in a cold voice, "Yes, I know. If you had truly committed any crime, you would have been sent to a prison inside the city. Only those who have been framed on false charges are brought to the prison on this island." Afterward, the warden beats him severely and locks him in a small cell. The door of this cell is only opened when the warden comes to beat him without any reason. Time passes in this way, and Edmund remains imprisoned alone in this cell. Therefore, to seek release, he writes to the Almighty on the wall. However, time goes by, and his condition worsens. He had no control over his situation, which caused him to break down heavily from within. After spending 12 years in this prison, his faith in the Almighty fades away, and he assumes that he will have to remain imprisoned here for the rest of his life. But suddenly one day, the ground beneath his cell begins to shake. Terrified by this strange occurrence, Edmund watches after a few moments as a man emerges from beneath the ground. This man's name is Abbe Faria, and we will call him simply Faria. Faria is an inmate from the lower floor who has been digging a tunnel for 5 years, and by chance, that tunnel ends in Edmund's cell. It felt as though the Almighty had heard his prayers. After Faria's arrival, Edmund was finally able to speak with someone. Due to years of isolation, his mental state had been deteriorating, but seeing Faria now somewhat improved his condition. Faria then takes him to his own cell through the tunnel. Edmund becomes overjoyed because he no longer needs to waste time writing pleas on the wall. Afterward, going to Faria's cell, Edmund is extremely surprised because Faria's cell was unlike anyone else's. It looked like a nice hotel room, furnished for comfort, with many books kept on a bookshelf. Now Faria makes a promise to Edmund, saying, "If you help me dig the tunnel, during our free time I will teach and educate you." Edmund had no other work anyway, so he agrees immediately. Later, just as they were about to start digging the tunnel, the sound of a guard's footsteps approaching can be heard. Edmund quickly returns to his cell out of fear and begins tidying up the trash because the guard was coming to collect his refuse. In this prison, cell doors are opened only twice, once to collect the garbage and once to deliver dinner, leaving the entire day completely empty, which gives them plenty of time to dig the tunnel without getting caught. Now Faria cuts a tiny bit of his hair, places it on a stone, and sets it on fire, and within a few moments, a candle is made. Then the two of them enter the tunnel and start digging the earth ahead again. Space is very limited down there, so digging the earth was not easy. Faria estimates that if they keep digging at this pace, it will take at least another 3 years to reach the outside world. One day, during a rest break, Edmund was reading one of Faria's books when he learns that Faria was formerly a skilled swordsman. Now Edmund insists and says, "If you do not teach me how to sword fight, I will stop digging the tunnel." Edmund now had only one goal in his life: to take revenge on his enemies. Hearing this, Faria agrees to teach him swordsmanship. Faria keeps explaining to him that spirit is a warrior's greatest strength. He begins to teach him using falling drops of water in the room. He puts his hand into the falling water from above and pulls it back so quickly that not a single drop touches his hand. Now Faria tells Edmund to learn this, and then Faria goes off to dig the tunnel while Edmund continues to practice. A few days later, Faria breaks the wood of his door and makes a fake sword out of it, and keeps teaching Edmund how to sword fight. Alongside learning swordsmanship, Edmund also learns to read and write. Now their entire day goes by digging the tunnel, studying, and learning to sword fight. A few months later, Edmund becomes extremely skilled at handling a sword. Now Faria realizes that Edmund has become an even greater swordsman than he is. One day, during a conversation, Edmund learns that Faria used to work for a wealthy family named Syria, and the owner of that family was named Julian. Actually, Faria knew about an ancient treasure and where it was kept. Therefore, Julian told Faria to tell him where that ancient treasure was so that he could take it, but Faria refused. Consequently, Julian sent Faria to this prison on false charges. Hearing this, Edmund becomes extremely angry because he too had once sided with Julian, and Julian had sent both of them to this prison on false charges. Now, with the tunnel growing larger every day, they were coming much closer to their freedom. One day, they find tree roots in the tunnel, which makes Faria realize that their tunnel digging will be finished very soon. Realizing this, both of them become very happy. However, something happens very quickly that turns their happiness into sorrow, because the tunnel suddenly begins to shake, and many stones start falling on top of them from the tunnel. Faria falls beneath the stones. Edmund quickly clears away the stones and pulls Faria out. Faria suffers a heavy blow to his chest, leaving him quite injured, and he could die at any moment. In his final moments, Faria tells Edmund, "Beneath a stone in my room, there is a book, and inside the book, Edmund, you will find the map to that treasure for which Faria has been imprisoned here." Afterward, Edmund promises Faria that he will find this treasure and use it for good deeds. Hearing this, Faria feels a bit of relief, and within a few moments, he passes away. Seeing this, tears come to Edmund's eyes, and it feels to him as though he has become alone once again. Right at that moment, a guard comes to deliver food, and Edmund hides behind the wall. The guard calls out, but there is no answer, so he peeks inside and sees that Faria has died. He immediately goes to inform his senior about the matter. Taking advantage of this, Edmund enters the tunnel and closes its opening. After a while, the guard returns with his companions and stuffs Faria's dead body into a body bag. Down below, Edmund keeps waiting for them to leave, and as soon as the guard leaves, he quietly comes into the room and sees Faria's dead body, sparking an idea in his mind. He places Faria's dead body in his own cell and climbs into the body bag in Faria's place. A few moments later, the warden comes with his men to retrieve the corpse, and since this prison is on a remote island, they decide to throw the body into the sea. Meanwhile, a guard goes to Edmund's cell with food, but after knocking repeatedly, there is no response, so he becomes suspicious, opens the door, and goes inside, only to find Faria's corpse lying there instead of Edmund. Seeing this, the guard rushes off to call the warden. On the other side, the warden was preparing to throw the body into the sea when the guard arrives and shouts to warn him. But that day, a fierce wind was blowing, so no noise could be heard. Before being thrown, Edmund takes the keys from the warden's waist, and the warden himself falls into the sea along with Edmund. As soon as he hits the water, Edmund frees himself using the keys. When Edmund surfaces, he spots the warden, and the resentment that had built up inside him over years flares up, causing him to drown the warden in the seawater and finish him off right there. After that, without looking back, he begins swimming in the sea. The next morning, when he regains consciousness, Edmund finds himself on an island, unaware of how he got there. However, he is now quite happy, though not completely free, because he suddenly runs into a group of sea pirates. Now Edmund assumes he is going to die, but the pirate leader Louis gives him a chance, saying, "I will let you live on one condition. You just have to fight my traitorous companion, Codex. If Edmund wins, he will be able to join the sea pirate group, and Codex will be killed." Now a fight begins between Edmund and Codex, but Codex cannot last long against Edmund and is defeated by a single attack from Edmund. However, rather than killing him, Edmund tells Louis, "Look, we can be useful to your work. There is no benefit in killing us. Why don't you take us both with you?" Seeing Edmund's good heart, Louis is pleased and decides to keep both of them with him. Later, while talking on the ship, Edmund recounts his entire story of what happened over these 13 years to Louis. And upon hearing this, Louis lets him go so that Edmund can fulfill his revenge. Afterward, Codex shakes hands with Edmund, and since Edmund saved his life, he promises that he will always stand by his side. Now Edmund asks Codex to arrange for a boat, and later in the night, Edmund secretly visits his elderly master's home. However, his elderly master does not recognize him, and here Edmund learns that after he was sent to prison, his father died in grief. Hearing this news, Edmund feels deeply hurt from within. Right at that moment, Edmund is shocked to hear another piece of news. He learns that his former friend Montague framed him and married his fiancée Mercedes. The next morning, Edmund and Codex set off toward the island where the treasure was kept. However, after searching every corner of the island thoroughly, they do not find the treasure. Now Edmund realizes that the treasure might be underwater, so he steps into the water of a small river in the middle of the island, where he finds many old boxes containing genuinely dazzling bright gold. Seeing this, Codex is overjoyed and loads the boat with as many boxes of gold as possible, though taking all the gold requires a large ship. Yet now, a desire for revenge burns even stronger inside Edmund than joy, and he decides that he will use this gold for only one purpose: revenge. First, Edmund buys a massive mansion and declares himself the new rich man of France, inviting all the wealthy families in the vicinity to a party at his luxurious estate. Very quickly, he becomes famous among everyone, with everyone talking only about him. However, Edmund is doing all of this for a reason: to draw the attention of his treacherous friend Montague toward himself. Montague does come to his party, but leaves without speaking to him. Edmund then learns that Montague has a son named Percival. Because of this, Edmund devises a plan and earns Percival's trust by saving him from a dangerous situation. In a few days, it is Percival's birthday, so he invites Edmund to his birthday party, an opportunity Edmund has been waiting for, and he accepts immediately. At the party, Percival introduces his father Montague and Edmund to each other. Now, after 13 years, they were face to face, but Montague does not recognize him because Edmund's appearance has changed somewhat. However, when his wife Mercedes sees him, she makes a rough guess. She initially cannot fully recognize him, but when Edmund touches his hair a bit differently, Mercedes instantly recognizes him. In fact, Edmund used to touch his hair in this distinct way before. It was an old habit of his. Edmund knew that Montague had a huge greed for money, so he tells Montague a lie that he has found a massive treasure and will bring those golds on a ship the next day. In truth, finding the treasure is real, but bringing it by ship is a lie, because he wants to trap Montague and take his revenge. Hearing Edmund's words, Montague hatches a plan and decides to loot the gold from that ship. On the other side, after the party, Mercedes quietly sits in Edmund's car and, crying, tells Edmund that Montague had lied to her, telling her that Edmund had been hanged. Now Edmund worries that this truth might create obstacles in taking his revenge, so he tells Mercedes to leave from there for now. On the other side, we see that Edmund's ship is being raided by Montague's men, the very person who had a hand in sending Edmund to prison. He is thrilled, thinking how easily he has looted the ship, but right then a guard arrives and catches him. He tries to flee, but Edmund steps out right in front of him. The man tries to kill Edmund, but Edmund puts a hangman's noose around his neck and finally reveals his true identity to the man, so he knows why he is dying and for what crime. Elsewhere, Montague decides to flee out of fear, but Mercedes refuses to go with him and reveals a true fact. Percival is not actually his son, but rather Edmund's son. When Montague married Mercedes, she was already pregnant, and that was the only reason he had agreed to the marriage. Enraged, Montague flies into a fury and heads toward the fortress where he had hidden all the stolen treasure. But when he opens the boxes, he finds only sand inside. And finally, Montague opens one last box containing a chess piece that he had given to Edmund long ago. Right at that moment, Edmund arrives there. Montague finally understands the whole truth and, in a rage, attacks Edmund with a sword, but he is no match for Edmund. Edmund defeats him easily, and just as Edmund is about to deliver the final blow, Percival steps into the middle and says he will not let his father die like this. Taking advantage of this, Montague pulls out a pistol, but Mercedes arrives just then and stops Percival, telling him the truth that he is actually Edmund's son. Hearing this, Edmund is stunned, and right at that moment, Montague aims his pistol at Edmund, but Codex throws his dagger toward the pistol, causing the shot to miss and strike Mercedes in the shoulder. Taking advantage of this, Montague tries to escape from there, but suddenly Edmund appears right in front of him. Mounting his horse, Montague tries to strike Edmund with a sword, but Edmund knocks him down. A fight ensues between them, but Montague cannot last long against Edmund, and within moments, Edmund finishes off Montague. Now, after taking his revenge, Edmund takes his son and Mercedes to the island where he spent 13 years of his life, where he continues to remember his teacher, Abbe Faria, and with that, the story comes to an end.